Okay, so the title on this one was a little bit misleading. Not every new modern comic sucks, just most modern comics suck. It is possible to find a good comic like a diamond in the rough on the newsstands, but that's getting harder and harder. But speaking of finding good comics, my comic book, Malevolent Rising, is funding on Indiegogo, and today, March 24th, Thursday, is the last day to back the comic. It ends at midnight tonight. I really hope you guys check this out. If you ever want to see a YouTube ranter try to put his money where his mouth is, and put out a product that he thinks is better than the rest, here's your chance. Please go ahead and check out that book. I'll put a link in the description. Now, on with the review. So, if we're talking about really crappy modern comics, what better place to start than our good friends at DC Comics? So, and if we're going to DC Comics, what better place to start than Jonathan Kent's Superman? So, for those of you who don't know who Jonathan Kent is the son of Kal-El, Clark Kent and Lois Lane. And when he was first introduced, he was just kind of this precocious, fun, young preteen superhero who would follow his dad around, or he would every now and then go off and get into solo adventures. And he had a title for a while called Super Sons, where he and Damian Wayne Robin, son of Batman, would kind of get together. They would go off on their own, and they would have just kind of young mini superhero adventures. And it was a fun book, lots of humor. The two had good chemistry together, and it was something about it was very nostalgic DC. It was a lot of classic villains, a lot of classic tropes and setups, and the two would always end up getting in over their heads. And it was a good dichotomy because Superboy had all of these powers that were coming to him because he's half Kryptonian, and so he would tend to rush in headstrong and get in over his head, while as Damian Wayne was always more smart and pragmatic, raised by the League of Assassins and Batman, he'd always be the one to hold back. So the two of them were a good counter to each other. But over the years, they decided to change the character, and Brian Michael Bendis was brought on board to write the Superman books, and he aged Jonathan Kent up to young adulthood. And this is really where the problems with the characters begin, because shortly after that, he got his own comic series, and they launched it in Future State, and this is the first time we got a glimpse of how bad this character had become. So his comic in Future State was easily the worst part of the entire event, and the story revolved around a spawn of Brainiac attacking Metropolis and turning them into zombies. And the military was going to move in against this spawn of Brainiac. But he spent a good amount of time just lecturing the military as to why the military-industrial complex is bad and they can't march into Metropolis. He ends up shrinking Metropolis and putting it in a bottle like Candor till he can try to think of a way to save it. Then he gets in an argument with Supergirl about why he's not good enough to be a superhero, and then he just kind of spends the rest of the series crying because he can't measure up to his dad's legacy. And when he's not crying about not measuring up to his father's legacy, he spends a lot of time organizing student walkouts, protesting climate change, or standing with refugees on national television from war-torn countries and getting himself arrested with them, because that's just what he does with his time now. We could point out that Superman could use his, freeze breath to refreeze the polar ice caps, or use technology from the Fortress of Solitude to clean up the environment, or he could go to the country of these deposed refugees and to overthrow their warlord and their corrupt governments and restore peace to their country. He literally has the ability to do all these things, but instead he decides to just kind of bring attention to causes and do these stunts on national television. They even had an issue where a giant hermit crab was attacking Metropolis, which you'd think would be kind of standard Superman fare. But during the conflict, he actually stops to lecture a kid who points up at him and says a monster is attacking, to let him know that it was wrong of him to just immediately call it a monster without understanding what this hermit crab's motivations were and why it was attacking the city, and that climate change has forced this thing out from the bottom of the ocean in the first place. So really it's humanity's fault that the crab is attacking humanity. And this is the kind of character they've turned Jonathan Kent into. He's just this kind of lectury bore. They even, in a move that really a lot of fans kind of recognize as total pandering, went ahead and made him gay and gave him a boyfriend, which would be a fine move if it were done interestingly, because it's not like Jonathan Kent had a romantic history in the past. So it's not like when they did this with Tim Drake and we're having to retcon a bunch of things. But at the same time, when they decide to give him a boyfriend, they just kind of give him a pink social activist online blogger. I mean, he's like the most annoying and worst combination of humanity you could do, and that's who they gave him as his love interest / supporting character. So I'm just wondering where all this is coming from. Original Superman was never like this. Original Superman, he is the archetype. He is the first superhero. and he deals with problems that are larger than life. Superman recognized that there was a fine line when you're as powerful as him between being a hero and being a god, and that there were certain conflicts that he just couldn't assert his power and get involved in because he needed to let humanity sort this out for themselves. Because if he started to get into all this, then eventually he either A, becomes a dictator, or B, humanity just relies on him to solve all of their problems, and he knew that couldn't be the case. He was there to solve larger than life problems, things that were out of this world. He used to have this colorful rogues gallery of villains that would show up and try to destroy the world, take over the world, destroy the sun, whatever it was they were trying to do. And these were the things that commanded Superman's attention. And Superman would take on these threats, no matter how evil or how brilliant or how villainous or how alien, and he would figure out a way, and he would always come out on top. He'd always win because he's Superman. And just like they said in the movie, that S on his chest stands for hope, and you never give up if Superman is still in the fight. That's his whole point. That's what he does. And that's why when Doomsday showed up and kicked the crap out of him and Superman had finally met his match, it was such a dramatic and shocking moment to the world, because we're not used to, Superman doesn't lose. We'd never seen that happen before. So that's the character that they built up, and it was fun and it was relatable and it was something that a lot of people could get behind. Superman was a comic you bought because he was pure escapism. Metropolis was this weird urban, slightly futuristic city where it seemed like a lot of problems had been solved, but a lot of new problems had been created, and only Superman could deal with it. I always wondered what would possess somebody to become a criminal in Metropolis when you know you've got the guy in the big red cape at light speed patrolling the air. Why wouldn't you just go to Gotham City and take your chances with the Batman? But people did, and those were the threats that Superman faced, and it was always fun. And that's the problem with Jonathan Kent. There is no fun in this book. Climate change and war refugees and protests and all this stuff, we all know it's out there. We read comics so we don't have to think about that for a second, because it's constantly on our phones, it's constantly on our televisions, it's in our newsfeed, it's in our social media, and we need a place to get away from it. And that's one of the things that comics has always been in the past. And that's one of the reasons why people who complain that comics have gotten too political because their safe space is gone. And this is one of the biggest problems with modern comics. And I know a lot of people like to make the argument back that, oh, well, comic books have always been political. Don't you read the X-Men? Well, yeah, we did. But the X-Men took a real life problem and kind of reframed it in a larger than life and fictional context, so that while yes, we're seeing a modern political problem, we're seeing it through the eyes of a very sci-fi superhero lens, which still made it fun. So comic books today, when they try to tackle these problems, it's not fun. Comics aren't doing their job then. They're not taking our minds off of it for 10 or 15 minutes while we just sit and enjoy a good superhero story. That's their role. And as far as just kind of a fictional narrative, one of the reasons that writers don't have Superman take on these problems is these problems don't get solved. Superman can't go out and beat war in the world. Superman can't go out and defeat the changing climate. I mean, like I said, he's got powers. He could mitigate it if he really wanted to, but that's not fun. You really want to read a story about Superman spending his time just literally blowing at the ocean on the top of the world? I mean, there's just reasons that these things weren't done, or at least were done sparingly. An issue every now and then where they're going to draw attention to something, or maybe it's an issue put out for charity, that's fine. But 364 days of the year, I really just want to pick up a book, see Superman fight Mongol or Luthor for the fate of the world, and then have Superman defeat the bad guy and move on to the next adventure. That's really what I want. And for modern comics, that's really all we want. We just want our superhero stories back. And Jonathan Kent is the furthest from that, and I think the best example of one of the biggest flaws in modern comics right now. And a lot of people, as I said, they look at politics in comics, they look at current writing, they look at the trend of switching characters, sexuality, and everything else, and it all really just boils down to none of that is fun. That's why we don't like it. It's not that we don't like any of these things, or we don't believe in climate change, or we don't think war refugees need a home. It's just, we just don't want to think about it while we read a Superman comic. That's really the bottom line. I think a lot of different people with different problems with the modern comic industry would kind of boil it down to that. They just need to put the fun back into comics. And really, if they could solve that problem, I think a lot of issues with the modern comics industry would turn around. But hey, that's my opinion, and I'd like to know what you guys think. Do you like the current climate of politics and comics, whether or not you agree, politics you agree with, that's not the question. Just do you think it has a place, at least as prominent a place as it seems to have right now? That's kind of what I want to talk about in the comic or in the comments. And can you think of a comic that's out there that either is sucking the fun out of the industry, just like Son of Kal-El Superman is, or is there something out there that really is still a good read that I'm missing? I do have a couple of fun books that I like reading. Daredevil's really good right now. I really enjoy Radiant Black is another fun book from Image. The Spawn books are knocking it out of the park. I think those books are fun. But like I said, those type books are becoming the diamonds in the rough. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. So please do me a favor, like, subscribe, comment in this video. It really helps the video get spread. It helps that YouTube algorithm get this out in front of more people. I really appreciate all you guys out there helping this channel grow. And again, check out my comic. Today is the last day. I'll put a link in the description. And that is all I've got for today. I will see you on the next video.